Hello there and welcome to episode 82 of Right Where You're Sitting Now. We are back. It's just me at the moment. I do have a co-host on this interview. It's Mr. Marck Satyr as always. But in this intro, I'm alone because we are idiots and forgot to record the intro and the outro. So the interview's already happened. It's with the wonderful Sarah Janes. We'll get to her in a minute. So we've been away for a little while since February. And there's a reason behind that. We kind of wanted to, well, I injured myself in Las Vegas of all places, as you can, I wish what happened is, in Vegas stayed in Vegas, but it didn't in this case. I brought a broken foot back with me. But anyway, yeah, so there was that. And also I was kind of we were trying to chase the kind of new release dragon, as it were. So I was always trying to book shows with, books that had just come out. Basically, you probably noticed there were gaps. And that's usually when... There was just no books that we were interested in that had come out. So what we've decided to do is stop chasing new books all the time. We're still going to cover new stuff, don't worry. But we're actually going to do more episodes now with, authors or subjects that we feel warrant an episode. It doesn't have to be a brand new release. It could be an older topic and, we can do our thing on it. I'd like to do a show on the Golden Dawn, for example, or William Cooper, the conspiracy theorist, or, there's so many subjects we could cover that just aren't being covered in new books. So that's moving forward what we're going to do. Obviously, if a new book comes out, we're going to go, yeah, okay, great, let's get that guy in. But no, it's for, to kind of keep it fun for us as well. We want to cover stuff that we're genuinely interested in. And one way we're thinking of doing that is by starting to do episodes that don't have a guest, but it's myself and Mark, or myself and Ulysses Black, or all three of us discussing a topic, where we go away, we research a topic and we come in and record a nice long episode for you guys, talking about an interesting subject you might not have thought of, or one you might not have heard of, or one you've heard of, but you're interested in what we have to say about it, because we come from our own angles, as we all do. But yeah, so that's the plan moving forward. We are back. I've overbooked the show now. In my usual style, I'll go away for a while and then come back with too many guests, so I'm going to be busy for the next few weeks. But anyway, enough of that waffling. We're back. So coming up this week, we have Sarah Janes. Sarah has just written a new book called Initiation into Dream Mysteries. It's a returning guest. I actually missed the interview with her last time. It was Josh who interviewed her. I was quite excited to finally talk to her, especially she only lives down the road from us. She lives in Hastings, which is 45-minute drive from where I live in Brighton. Yeah, so she's a local lady. She's a dream expert, and her new book is a great resource if you're interested, especially in the history of ritualized dreaming and how dreams have been used magically. She's your really your kind of go-to source these days. So let's go into that now, and it'll be myself and Marck Satyr. Hello, Sarah Janes. Good to have you back on the show. For those that didn't hear the first time you were on, could you give us a brief biography of yourself, please?
Sure. Well, brief biography. I've kind of done every single job conceivable, in my youth. More recently, I've kind of decided just to concentrate on dream research and retreats and writing. But I used to work in the TV and film industry, and I also worked in the music industry promoting mostly psychedelic American bands. And I'm currently curating a symposium that explores all aspects of dreaming in Athens at the end of October. So I've just written a book called Initiation into Dream Mysteries. And this is about the history and culture of the dream in the Western esoteric tradition. And it kind of looks at how dreaming was used as a form of magic and medicine. And I have always been a lucid dreamer. I've always been really into dreams. Ever since I was a toddler, I've had lucid dreams and interesting dreams. So I've been kind of dream obsessed my whole life. And even as a child, I'd like find whatever books I could find about dreaming. And I started my own lecture club in Hastings. I had a child, and when Indy was a baby, I decided that I didn't want to do gigs anymore. They were like late night, staying up really late. I didn't want that kind of lifestyle. So I started to do a lecture club instead. And I did contemplate going back to, or I have never been to university. So I contemplated going to university, and I thought I might study something like anthropology or neuroscience. And so I started to bunk into lectures at the University of Sussex, and realized kind of quite quickly that I probably didn't want to go back to university, but I did like lectures. So I used to ask lecturers to come and talk at a friend's house and then give them whatever money I could raise from my friends coming. So I think Anil Seth might have been the first person that I put on. He's the professor of neuroscience at the University of Sussex, and he is the co-director of the Sackler Centre for Consciousness Studies. So I started off with a lot of neuroscience lectures and psychedelic drugs and ancient culture and history. And then during lockdown, I think I kind of came to the conclusion that the thing that most excites me is ancient culture and philosophy. And so I decided to move into almost exclusively ancient culture. And because the Egyptology gigs have always sold the best, I changed the Explorers Club to be Explorers Egyptology, and I interviewed mostly Egyptologists and started to learn hieroglyphs as well. So that's it in a nutshell. I mean, yeah, there's been a lot of weird rabbit holes and side projects over the years.
I didn't know you worked in film and TV. What did you do there?
Yeah, well, I went to drama school, actually. I went to the Brit School. Oh, okay. And I always wanted to be a film director, actually, because of dreams, because my dreams were so weird. And I noticed you've got David Lynch on the back there. I love Twin Peaks. I loved any sort of film or TV that was like a dream-like. I love Alexandra Jodorowsky and things like this. Yeah. So I always wanted to be a dream film director. And my sort of ambition as a child was to invent a machine that could record my dreams so I could basically watch those as films. And so I started off in drama school. I went to the Brit School in South London. And then I got a job working as a runner, and I just had sort of not very exciting jobs in the TV and film industry. Although I was very cocky when I was like a teenager. I left school quite young. And I remember going into my boss's office and saying that I wanted $6,000 to start a TV production company. And he said that he'd give me $2,000. But then we pretty much just spent it on going out, having nice dinners and going on holiday and whatnot. I mean, we did have an idea we were going to make this sitcom. We had a lot of meetings, and I mean, we were just sort of playing at being like grown-up TV makers, basically. I was only 18 at the time.
TV executives. But yeah. Okay, so tell us a bit about the book. How did the book come about? Obviously, it's on Inner Traditions, so we're always very grateful to. They're very good at sending us stuff, which is great. Yeah. So they sent us a couple of copies of your book. So how did it come about? Like, what was the process there?
Well, I've been researching ancient dream culture, especially in Greece and Egypt and Mesopotamia, for more than 10 years now. And I started to give talks about ancient dream culture and lucid dreaming and sort of ancient techniques. And I became co-host with Anthony Peake, my friend and author, who has a show called Consciousness Hour. And sometimes during lockdown, especially, we're doing quite a lot of shows. We're doing about one a week. And one of our guests was Richard Grossinger, who is an editor at Inner Traditions. And I told him about my idea for a book, and he was up for it. So I sent off a kind of a pitch and got a publishing deal with them.
I mute myself. That would help. Yeah, no, it's good. It's come out, very well. It's and I've seen it crop up a lot over the internet. So it's obviously selling copies, which is a good thing. Obviously, so but yeah, let's just dive into some of the sort of main topics of the book. And one that really grabbed me early on was this idea of dream incubation. I was wondering if you could talk to us about the kind of what is it, and kind of how it's been used, and is it being used in the modern day, etc.
Dream incubation is essentially like any practice that is designed to elicit a desired dream. So in terms of ancient dream incubation and the sort of classical incubation that you see in the Greco-Roman period or in the Hellenic area with the sanctuaries dedicated to the dream healer god Asclepius, it would involve a variety of activities, usually fasting, purging of some sort, an emotional catharsis, purification, ritual bathing, this kind of thing. And I've just actually recently come back from the sanctuary of Asclepius at Epidavros in Greece, just south of Athens. And so the idea there was that Asclepius was essentially a chthonic deity. He had a celestial aspect. He's associated with the constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. But this chthonic element, this chthonic aspect of him was really important. So this whole sanctuary functioned around the thymele, which was thought to be his chthonic throne, his chthonic seat. And there was this idea that because he was such a fantastic healer and he was able to even bring people back from the dead, that he was in danger of taking on the role of the gods. And so he was punished. He was killed by Zeus. But he was, after his father Apollo pleaded for Zeus to bring him back to life, he let Asclepius live, but he had to dwell in the underworld. So there's a beautiful circular structure at Epidavros called the thymele, which is a circular altar building. And underneath the floor of that, there was these almost like a labyrinth, 3 concentric rings, a kind of winding path. And it's thought that that was the place where Asclepius dwelled. So in ancient Greek medicine, sleep was considered to be the brother of death. And sleep served as a kind of pseudo death. And so there's this idea that you could die in the underworld and meet Asclepius in the dreams, because Hades and the dream world are kind of associated as well. And then your sick self would die in the underworld, and your healthy self could be reborn and emerge anew and carry on your life.
Yeah, and those the 3 sons, aren't they? Hades' 3 sons are Thantos, Morpheus, and Hypos, aren't they? So death, sleep, and dreaming are all closely related. And then there's almost intimations in that legend of the god of healing dwelling in the underworld, almost like intimations of you have to go into the unconscious or the deeper self. It's almost like a suggestion of that, isn't there?
Well, these sanctuaries functioned for about 2,000 years, and there's evidence for about 400 of them around the ancient world as well. So they were obviously doing something right. And as they evolved over that 2,000-year period, they went from most of the cures being procured by magical means and these incubation rituals to more kind of traditional surgical and medical practices and medicine. But Asclepius was always viewed as the superior primary healer. So the optimum cure would be receiving a divine dream. And it's interesting to me, I find it fascinating that a lot of the yamata, the sort of testimonies of people that visited the sanctuaries, say that Asclepius essentially spontaneously healed them in a dream. They went to sleep ill. They woke up completely cured. So, I do think that there's an aspect of faith healing and the placebo effect going on here, where people believe so much that these dream events are real that their body's actually biophysically responding as if they are really receiving a healing. And so I think that if that was somehow actualized and managed in sleep temples, then they're way ahead of us in terms of, what things can be utilized for healing. I mean, I find it really interesting in medicine these days that people write off the placebo effect as it doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless. When you think actually the placebo effect is the most amazing thing about healing imaginable, that you can heal just because you believe that you're being given a cure. That should be utilized in some way.
Yeah, and it can also inhibit medication. So, the opposite. Yeah. It can actually. It's the nocebo. Is that what I say?
Yeah, you have the nocebo effect.
If you're nocebo, So you can be prescribed medication, but if you've got a conviction it's not going to work, it won't do what it's supposed to do. So
I remember there was a very famous story. There was a guy that had cancer who went to Lourdes, which is the holy water place, and doused himself in the water, and started to miraculously recover in the hospital until he had a conversation with a friend who didn't believe in this Lord's healing and put doubt into his mind, and immediately his cancer reappeared. And so he had this like insane placebo effect from this belief in this. I don't really know the story of Lourdes, but kind of. I know the water.
That's another episode in its own right.
Yeah, probably.
I think, isn't there an appearance of the Virgin Mary's associated with Lourdes? I think, like a miraculous.
Well, what's intriguing about it is that the girl who had this vision, she doesn't refer to it as the Virgin Mary. She says, "I saw a little woman," and that she drew a picture of it. And in that area of France, that phrase is more related to like the fairies or the fae. And it was actually the local priest who said, "Oh well, oh no, it's the Virgin Mary." It was, it's interesting. It was sort of attached to it. And there was also the girl said, "There's a spring here. It's dry. It's hidden. It's dried up." And actually there was, when they dug, they found the spring. So maybe it's very, I don't know, but it's suggested likely that it was an older healing centre,
Yeah.
There you go. Bit of a side topic.
Yeah, we're going off in a bit of a thing there.
Asclepius was a serious rival for Jesus. It's why he was kind of tried to obliterate him from the record, or they absorbed the dream healing rituals from the cults and just moved them into the churches. So a lot of the churches and the early basilicas that are built on sites of the dream healing sanctuaries become known for centers for miraculous healing, because I always sort of describe Asclepius as sort of like a Jesus stroke Wim Hof type figure. He's like a big advocate of cold water bathing, and he's like a kindly miraculous healer.
Yeah, and there's similarities in these mythos, isn't there? And these they're quite similar to the Christian narrative as well. They're sort of
and the Egyptian narrative with Osiris and Isis as well. This this chthonic sacrificed god dwelling in the underworld and miraculously healing and curing people.
Yeah, and intriguingly, the Richard Dadd, the famous Victorian painter who lived in Bedlam, he had that. He had this notion of the god of healing being related to the Christian narrative, and actually painted a picture of the birth of Asclepius, and and he makes that connection with Christianity, with Jesus, which was I think
there's a strong connection there between Jesus and Asclepius. I think actually they modeled Jesus after Asclepius. That was the kind of face and representation that they kind of got the idea from.
And the staff with the serpent. I mean, that's in the Hebrew Testament, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a very ancient. That's an interesting archetype in itself.
Yeah. So, I mean, dream incubation was interesting, but the sort of next thing that really took my attention was where you talk about star knowledge in the book. Could you talk to that a bit? Like, why is knowledge of the stars so important for dreams in particular?
Well, it comes down really to this idea that certainly in the ancient Near East, in Mesopotamia, you get this very strong narrative that the stars and planets are gods and goddesses. Like, they are just personified divine beings. And, I've thought a lot about this. I love this idea. There's this Sumerian term, Shitir Shamay, which means the writing of heaven. And that describes that constellations are actually seen as texts that can be read. So if you can read the stars, then you can work out the future. And if you look at ancient star lore in terms of Aboriginal knowledge, like, they have an incredible amount of knowledge about the stars that they can see. And they all relate to seasons for hunting, all kinds of like practical land management and survival skills can be gleaned from the stars. There's a book there's a book by an anthropologist, Charles Mountfield, who studied with the Aboriginals in the Western Desert, I think. And he said that they have a story for every star down to the 4th magnitude. They just know they can read the stars, they can read the heavens, which is, I think we forget just how much we're impacted by the amount of light pollution that we have these days. And the stars would just obviously been perceived as being this kind of like overwhelming, powerful force that was over us all the time, and would have been observed generation after generation as well. So there was this knowledge that these were imperishable, immortal beings that had this tremendous power and influence and longevity. And then there are these sort of astral magic techniques written about in all of the texts, in Sumerian and Babylonian texts. The Assyriologist Erica Rayner described this technique for healing called astral irradiation, where you would lie a patient or maybe a charm or an amulet and even herbs underneath particular constellations at certain times of the day. And the idea was that you would absorb the heavenly radiance from the gods, and that's one way that you could heal. And then before the kind of more exact sciences of astronomy and astrology came into play, there was this idea of celestial omena, which was just close observations made of the stars and the movements of the planets, and relating these things to things that would happen on Earth. And the celestial omena and dream oracles in particular became associated together, because obviously dreams happen at nighttime usually, and they happen because the stars are visible. So that it's when the gods and the goddesses are visible and they have more influence over human beings. So I think there's that relationship there. So gods were seen to send dreams to mortals. They could actually send a dream. And there's an interesting idea in especially ancient Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt, and then into Greece as well, that a dream could be a personified spirit, which is something really interesting to contemplate, because it's not something we generally think these days. This idea that certainly in the case of nightmares, and there's a lot of descriptions of nightmares that sound a lot like sleep paralysis in ancient Egyptian dream texts, that a dream could have some sort of volition of its own and overpower you. And there are descriptions of dreams and sort of dream demons that fall on men at night when they're sleeping. So there's all these kind of apotropaic techniques for getting rid of dream demons. Like you would have a variety of different plaques to ward off Near Eastern dream demons, like Lilith, for example, or Lamashtu. And then in Egypt, people made these tiny little clay rearing cobras that would scare off any demons that were coming for them in the night. So, the stars are vitally important. And I think we would do well to turn off our lights every now and again and recognize that we exist in space, because I think that we underestimate the power of the universe. And some people are scared to think that they live in a universe. And I think it's an accident. I don't think it's any kind of conspiracy, but we've just diminished the power of the stars and the heavens so much. And I think that if we actively sought out these like vast stellar vistas, we would improve the mental and emotional well-being of the populations, I think.
Yeah. So this is something I was going to ask. I'm not sure I can't remember if you mentioned it in the book or not. When were dreams sort of first mentioned as a kind of magical tool? Like, what's the kind of earliest record you can think of?
Just forever. And I think it's because of this relationship to death, because, I read this really interesting article from an Israeli archaeologist, and she said something like she was investigating really, really early human remains in a cave in Israel. And she said, you have to be aware that ancient people may not have viewed biological death in the same way that we do. And that in and of itself is an amazing thing to think about. And the fact that dreams and death were so closely associated, that perhaps, one thing that's amazing about dreams to this day is the fact that you can meet dead people in your dreams and you can have really meaningful interactions with them. And I think for ancient people, that would have been very strong evidence that when you died, you go to some other place that's only accessible via dreams. So dreaming has always been considered a way to contact dead people. And I would say some of the really early evidence, for me at least, I don't know how many people would agree with it, is if you look at a site like Çatalhöyük and the small domiciles that they have there, the sleeping platforms are purposefully built underneath intramural burials. So there are small skeleton bundles directly under the sleeping platforms. And we know that they're the sleeping platforms. They could have buried these people anywhere. I think there's something intentional about sleeping next to the dead like that, there's this idea that you can contact these people in dreams.
But also, I mean, in the Hebrew Testament, you've got Jacob's dream. He sleeps on the stone and has this dream about, angel. It's translated as angel, celestial beings descending this ladder. And then the next morning when he wakes up, he sets the stone up and says, "This is the house of God. This is Bethel. This is where Bethlehem came from." So Bethlehem's still there. So that, this is the house of God, Bethel, which is literally what it means. The whole Bethlehem is based on that, that dream. Ultimately, think about the historical implications of that dream. It's literally unimaginable.
I do think, if you look at all religions, basically they have some sort of afterlife aspect to them, and I think that the ideas about the afterlife were fueled by dreams, deeply fueled by dreaming. And so I personally think dreaming is the perhaps main inspiration for religion and afterlife beliefs in particular.
And if you think about, which you talk about in the book quite a lot, the evolution of consciousness, and so at one point, what the very early humanity were purely creatures of instinct, creatures of instinct, and then became self-aware. So you have this theory of the consciousness and the unconscious sort of being disassociated, and then now with psychotherapy and whatever, the two things are coming back together again. And in dreaming, of course, that's where that's the raw road into psychology.
Absolutely. And I think that's why we're in such a precarious situation now, because people are forgetting about dreams. I think we need dreams, and you look at the prevalence of things like cannabis is a massive REM suppressor for most people. It doesn't affect everyone in the same way, but it massively usually impacts REM sleep in people. Antidepressants that are given out to anyone going to the doctor saying they're mildly unhappy can get put on antidepressants if they don't guard against it. So if you don't have dreams and you don't remember your dreams, and device addiction is huge because light stimulates your pineal gland, it disrupts your circadian rhythm, so you don't have such good quality sleep. You have to make an effort to have good dreams, and a lot of people, if they don't have experiences in life of having good dreams, don't know what they're missing, so they don't pursue it. That's why I really like working with children, because you can get children really interested and excited about it. And quite often they still have good dreams until they start getting mobiles. I mean, I remember when my nephew, who's 20 now, used to go and stay at my mum and dad's house. And my mum and dad couldn't believe that he used to sneak his phone into his bedroom and would just be on it all night long. And so many children are doing this. They just have their phone in bed with them all night long. And it's kind of pinging and going off throughout the night. And they're getting up and checking it constantly. And I think, that is something that is just going to be extraordinarily detrimental to the health of a whole generation.
I think
I tend to agree. It's difficult to know what the effect of these technologies are, especially on the sort of developing brain. I'm sure there's some positives as well, but yes, we have to be like anything. There's a toxic element. You'll love me because I don't have any connection to the internet at all, and I don't have television. So and my phone, so called, is it's just one up from a plastic cup and a piece of string. Really, it's
he's certainly not a gadget man, are you?
No, not. I think technology is a good servant, but it's a poor master.
I just spent 10 days in this little tiny village in Tuscany, and it was just such a I think being offline is a luxury now. And it was a luxury to not look at my phone and not check emails. And it was amazing. I really enjoyed it. I think that this is going to be something that people monetize now as well, when it's just normal and free.
Yeah, I noticed that. I visited Damanhur recently. This
amazing.
Yeah, and they have like a weird. I swear they block phones there. Like even in areas where there should be coverage, there wasn't. But the whole day we were there, we didn't.
Well, the mountains probably have a strong effect.
Yeah. It's an amazing place though. It's but anyway, yeah. So another thing that struck me in the book was you talk about the divine feminine, and I was wondering, could you talk to that a little bit? Because obviously the divine feminine comes into some more occult things as well, and so there's a crossover there, and I'm quite interested in that.
Well, I'm going to do a talk on the 22nd of July actually about this. Generally speaking, it was the female deities that were the guardians of death and dreaming in very ancient times. And then it kind of got taken over, I don't know, like to a degree in Egypt and in Greece. Suddenly it was sort of patriarchy, like Apollo took over the oracles and Asclepius took over the dream healing. And actually, the sanctuary of Asclepius at Epidavros is the descendant of a much earlier hill shrine on the mountain behind the theatre there that was dedicated to a Mycenaean goddess, which was a healing goddess. And so this hill shrine looks a little bit like the Peak sanctuaries in Crete, which are these healing sanctuaries that are often dedicated to goddesses, and they're full of votives in the same way that the later sleep sanctuaries have all these votives of body parts for healing. So, and then of course you have like the mysteries in Greece as well, Demeter and Persephone. You have this descending into the underworld. You have Inanna's descent into the underworld as well. So at some point it's taken over by men, but this idea that women were not just the creators of life, but they would also be there at the end of life as well. They were always acting as psychopomps, guiding people into the underworld. And I think it's a reasonable idea if you think about women are the ones ushering people into life. So therefore they would be there at the end. Also, childbirth was more fraught with dangers and risks then as well. And lifespans, generally speaking, are shorter, not necessarily shorter, but quite often people would have violent deaths or die in their youth. A lot of infanticide and child deaths and things like this as well. So women were very much like the guardians of life. And in ancient Anatolian magic, there's this idea that the magical symbols of women are the spindle and the mirror. And there's this idea that women or female deities are the ones that spool out a certain amount of thread that denotes how long your lifespan is. They're in charge of your fate. And a mirror can be used to kind of augment and change your life accordingly. And there are spells to make men impotent by capturing that image in a mirror and things like this.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to
stay away from mirrors.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. I've been to Montserrat, where we have the Shrine of Black Virgin.
Oh, me too. I love Montserrat. Yeah.
And actually at the back there's a little room where there's votive offerings where people have prayed and showing how we've disappeared.
That's right.
Showing what the healing, or the miracles, or whatever you want to call them.
So that's a super ancient idea. This idea of taking a votive that you need to heal.
Yeah.
And even now, you have like Saint Lazarus in Brazil. I just bought a big bag of wax votives from Brazil. You take your votive into a temple. It's left in the inner sanctum, hanged up, and it's kind of protected and healed by the presence of the god, because that sacred precinct is seen as being like the domain of the god. And so that divine influence can affect your afflicted body part. And then because obviously so many of these votives, they were ritually buried then as well. And often they would be buried underneath the temple or sanctuary. So they are sanctified when they're buried as well.
Yeah. Funny enough, my great grandmother in the village she lived in, and she couldn't read or write. She was a person in the village who looked after you when you were dead, So she prepared, and also she brought you into the world. She actually, she went to the pregnant, helped the people coming into the world. What's the word I'm looking?
Midwife. I think.
Midwife is the word to look at. She was a local midwife, and she also, so she saw you coming in, and she saw you going as well. So yeah. So that's an interesting perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, I think when you talk about the magical mirrors, there's some connection between that and the old women rituals, aren't there? Is that right?
Yeah. So old women are I guess, like the chief diviners of ancient Anatolia, and they have this really powerful influence all over ancient Anatolian culture for a long period of time. Even when the Hittites took over Hattiland, the Hittites were known as the god collectors, or the land of 1,000 gods, because they just absorbed cultures, and they were sort of military patriarchal society. And they apparently didn't like the old women. They were always trying to get rid of them, but their influence was so powerful that they had to have them in court, and they still consulted them on important decisions as well. So the old women were the seers of ancient Anatolia. And I mean, in quite a lot of ancient texts, women are often described as the best dream interpreters. And in the ancient Near East, in Sumerian and Babylonian texts, interpreting dreams is described as untangling knots, which also relates back to this idea of women weaving and looming and having that symbol of the spindle as well. So the mirrors are a magical tool. They are a kind of elite grave good as well. I think some of the oldest mirrors ever discovered actually were discovered in Çatalhöyük, which is not long after Göbekli Tepe, a kind of a proto-city settlement in southern Anatolia. And these are polished obsidian mirrors. And so, yeah, how the magic took place in those, there are some spells, there were some rituals written down in later texts, and there does seem to be some continuity in terms of religious practice and symbols and ideas about gods and goddesses. And there's this idea in ancient Anatolia that dreams shorten your life, so it's important to get rid of nightmares. And so old women are often called in to get rid of nightmares.
That's interesting. And obviously the Obsidian Mirror comes into more Western esoteric practices. Wasn't Dee's mirror
the most famous scrying mirror? Is Dee's Obsidian Mirror, which we now know is actually Aztec. That's incredible that he's.
I go and look at that quite often in the British Museum, and it's one of the objects that's most often on loan as well, which I find quite interesting.
Yeah,
I wonder who's got it.
I've noticed that it sort of follows me around because I'm going from exhibition to exhibition, and there it is. And I've said this before, but if you go into the British Museum, and there's like in the next more or less the next gallery, a couple of galleries off, is the Aztec collection, and there's an obsidian mirror there, and it's the same. It's essentially it's the same.
I love the fact that Dee's mirror is opposite Pazuzu as well. I've always liked that. There's a Pazuzu.
Is Dee's mirror opposite Pazuzu?
Yeah, there's like a little tiny Pazuzu statue directly opposite. Yeah,
but also with the whole process of scrying, you're with the obsidian mirror or whatever you use, speculum, you're skimming the unconscious mind. From my experience, most of what you're seeing is like the flotsam and jetsam of the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind, though, is a deep ocean, and there's lots of stuff that comes up from that, which is far more deeper, which goes beyond.
Idea as well of in a lot of ancient dream interpretation of dreams existing in this kind of mirror realm. So I think mirrors can be seen as an expression of that as well. And if you think about, I find it fascinating how material culture influences perception and consciousness and our ideas about reality. So before even with the invention of something like an obsidian mirror, people weren't seeing their reflection very often. They didn't really know exactly what they looked like. And so I think this would lead to less self-identification. You wouldn't necessarily identify with self quite as much if you weren't constantly bombarded with your own image. And you look at something like the glass delusion, which King Charles of France, the mad or the beloved king, depending on your, what option you like the best. But he was diagnosed with this glass delusion when glass was introduced as a regular kind of building material. And he started to associate with the glass and started to think that he would shatter if anyone pushed him. So he had to wear like special padded outfits to stop him feeling like he was going to shatter at any given moment. So I think materials and the objects, especially in terms of ancient cultures, where you think creating and crafting an object took an extraordinary amount of time and skill, and no single decision on that object would ever have been an accident or just, a Chinese workshop misprint or, mass-produced item. They're like so explicitly purposeful in every single aspect. And so the symbolic languages that are used across all of those cultures can be read, like the symbols can be read in an object, and you can get some sense and idea from it.
Yeah, it's definitely. So in the book, you met right at the beginning, I think, actually, you mentioned the term cosmic consciousness. And I've had I've had conversations with people. Everyone I speak to seems to have a different definition of what cosmic consciousness means, but I'd be quite interested to hear your definition of it.
I guess I would identify as a pantheist. I think that we are part of a continuum of consciousness, and we're kind of identifying as individuals because that's the nature of every aspect of this continuum of consciousness. I think that's it, really. It's kind of really simple, isn't it? It's just like we're obviously all part of one planet, and then that planet is obviously all part of a solar system, and that solar system is part of a galaxy, and that galaxy is part of the universe, and we're all part of that. And I think that's why removing our view of the night sky starts to make us think we are something that we're not. We're like self-contained, but we're not. We're like completely reliant upon the sun. And, I love that quote. Can't remember where it's from, when the Spanish rock up in South America and say, you're pagans or you're evil for worshipping the sun. And they say, well, we can see the sun, at least the sun's real. So I think we should go back to being solar worshippers and earth worshippers. It makes so much more sense. And it's actually completely legitimate. We can see it. It's everywhere. It's obviously intelligent. And we'd all feel so much happier if we did that as well, I think.
And I think it's there, at least in some place, like St. Francis of Assisi had a prayer to, brother sun and sister moon, and so it's there that reverence for the sense of awe that you get from the celestial, even contemplating it. You said before about people even being sort of afraid of it, but I think we've lost that sense of awfulness. People use the word, I had a curry last night, it was awful. Well, that's not what it's not what it really means. It means a sense of awe, feeling overwhelmed, like almost like a kind of sort of holy dread, but in a very kind of impressive, positive.
Well, I was just reading, actually, William Shatner's statement after traveling into space. It's absolutely beautiful. It's like, he said he thought he thought he was going to be inspired to kind of conquer other planets and be excited about space exploration. He said all he felt was this like intense sense of dread of the immensity of death of everywhere other than our planet, which is like this beautiful, harmonious, gorgeous gem of life in a sea of nothingness. And I think that's really beautiful. And I think a lot more of us could feel like that if we saw the stars properly, but we just don't. I mean, it's massively affected our perception of self and the rest of the cosmos and our relationship to it, because it is there, but we can't see it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important photographs that ever taken was the picture of the Earth, wasn't it? The little blue dots. That when that's stuck in all our, made a huge impact in that, being able to see that for the first time. And I mean, of course, the astronauts even more so, because they were in actuality. But even the photograph.
Well, I had a dream once that I was standing on the moon, and this overview effect that astronauts get. And this dream was lucid. It was really powerful. It was about 20 years ago now. But I remember seeing the Earth turning on its axis. And after that, for about 2 weeks afterwards, I could never see the sunrise in the same way, because I was just so conscious of the fact that I was on a planet moving rather than the sun was rising up over some immovable edge of the planet. And it was amazing. And I got this real sense of what it was like to go into space.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's something very deep in your sort of philosophical perspective, you know, the realization that our dream life can actually change us.
Sorry, it's car backfiring. Did you hear that?
Yeah. Oh, God, I thought something smashed through the wall or something.
Yeah, you know, our dreams can change us. You know, we can have incredible dreams that are profoundly significant. I've had dreams which have changed my life, and I've had dreams that are still with me, you know.
Yeah, me too.
You know, and also you can learn things from dreams. You know.
Yeah.
I had one very vivid dream I had very, very long time ago. Was well, basically I saw God, but God was this like super sun. It wasn't yellow; it was white, and it was at the center of the universe, and it wasn't a personified like your pantheism idea. It was towards that, and then as it was a very vivid dream, incredibly vivid, you know, and there were figures coming out of it, and they as they grew bigger, I recognized them as gods. They were gods from different pantheons. I remember seeing Ganesh and stuff, but then there was the other side, the dark side, and there was all the evil personifications coming out. But one of the things that like really stuck with me is that this immense sun had like not just worlds coming out of it. It had whole universes emerging out of it, and these universes emerged out of it, and then they shrunk back down, and they were like absorbed back into the thing, but the mass remained the same. The mass was always the same, and what came out of it, a bit like a huge piece of clay. If you had like a pound of clay, and then you took figures out of it and made them, and then stuck them back in again. The amount of clay is the same, so there's that deeper connection. And that was something which is still with me, and which came to me for just a dream, you know.
Well, I wonder how many more celestial and cosmic dreams we'd have if we could see the stars every night as well. You know, I mean, they are like undeniably awe-inspiring, and yet we're cut off from them, and I think it's really tragic.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about one thing that's obviously dreams factor into the kind of magic that we tend to cover more, I suppose, on the show, which is, you know, like Western esotericism. And
also can I say, you know, in like the Golden Dawn tradition and so on, visualization is so much part of it, and the part of the brain you visualize with is the part you dream with, which you imagine with. So, you know, if you're visualizing, I don't know, a pentagram or whatever, or a figure, an archetypal figure, you're the same part of your brain that you dream with. You're using. It's been activated. You know, you're treading the same, you know, sacred ground of the unconscious.
I think that's why children often have such good dream lives, is because they spend so much time in imaginative play, and they're always imagining things. And I do think there's a kind of learned aphantasia these days as well, where people are using devices, they're not using their sort of imaginal capabilities, they're not reading novels. All these kind of things really help you to visually conjure up imagery. And if conjuring up visual imagery is not strong for you, then it's harder for you to remember your dreams, and harder for you to really have deep, complex, strikingly visual dreams as well, actually.
I know Crowley was obsessed with like writing a dream diary and that kind of thing, and the dream practices. Did you research any kind of more modern Western esoteric kind of practices, or?
Not so much. I've read a lot of that kind of stuff when I was younger and was quite into that kind of stuff. And then what I've got really excited about is going back to the most ancient things. I don't know, there seems to be like a sort of original purity or something about looking into ancient Anatolian dream culture, for example, because you still see all the same themes in their essence. Like the essence is just consistent. It's consistently about the dream realm being the same place where dead people go and where the gods dwell. Consistently, it's about somehow changing your reality by changing your dreamscape. And it's also consistently about predicting the future. If you look into ancient dream interpretation texts, they're entirely concerned with predicting the future. It's never about revealing the personality of the dreamer. It's this view. And if you look at the kind of strong oracular tradition throughout the West, throughout Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Greece, like divination is just everywhere all the time. It's like ever present. So there's this concept there, of course, that you can predict the future easily and reliably, especially with dreams. Dreams is always seen as being like one of the best forms of divination.
Yeah, I mean the Babylonians, particularly were known, weren't they, for they had that dream culture, and they record professional dream interpreters, and they had like a list of the certain types of dream. Like, funny enough, one of them is the dream of being naked in public, which is incredible because we're still having it now. So that's an
It's interesting, those little dreams that are kind of dream memes, I call them, like this idea that there are these persistent ideas and motifs in dreaming, and teeth falling out is something that you see in ancient dream interpretation texts. But also in, I think in Egypt, a common one was your face turning into a leopard. But most ancient dream interpretations, especially in Mesopotamia and Egypt, are about wordplay and punning, which I find amazing because I think this reveals how much dreaming is dependent upon language. Because if the ancient Egyptian language system and it relies upon wordplay, punning, and homophones, like nearly all interpretations are based upon some sort of linguistic solution.
Yeah. When I read Freud, I have Freudian dreams. When I read Jung, I have Jungian dreams. It's interesting that I'm having the dreams at all, because there's like the unconscious is like a thing under a stone. It's being prodded, and it sort of comes out and sort of does something.
Well, when I started to learn hieroglyphs, I started to have hieroglyphs in my dreams, and it's quite interesting learning hieroglyphs because the way you learn them and the way you think about them, it engages more brain regions or more kinds of ways of thinking than looking at ordinary language. Because they're pictorial, you make all these associations. You can't help but make associations. And so it's very compatible with the way dreams work, because dreams work, they're all association based. So learning hieroglyphs is an amazing way to change your dreams into something sort of weirder and more different.
You're sort of internalizing them. Well, the Western esoteric tradition, there's the Kabbalah, and there's a whole load of stuff, that which is internalized in those disciplines as well, isn't there? It's the same process essentially.
So dreaming as a creative source has always been something that's really interested me. Obviously, Lynch, where is it? There. I can't. Oh, it's back to front. There we go. Lynch is my favourite director, and I think the thing that really strikes me about Lynch is this kind of dream logic that I think he calls. Well, it's been called dream logic in his films, but you really genuinely feel with his films that you are witnessing somebody else's dream, essentially. I know that's almost a cliche when you talk about film, but with him it genuinely means that. I can think of hundreds of scenes in his films where I think, oh god, he's recreating that kind of the tone and the kind of movement and all the sort of strange, not quite rightness of a dream, where
the kind of dark interiors, even the really simple things like dark interiors. Like when I was a kid, Twin Peaks just blew my mind. Like I loved Twin Peaks so much.
Yeah, it was huge.
And I was obsessed with it, and it was one of the first things I ever saw that felt like actually watching a dream in parts, in the dream scenes. And then Jodorowsky, to me, is the director that his films look most like dreams to me.
Yeah, Santa
Sangha. I do think his idea of psychomagic, I think it works if you consider just watching Holy Mountain. If you just watch Holy Mountain before you go to bed, it's brilliant. It works because it has all these super graphic archetypal images. And so it's like food for your consciousness. You then go to sleep and all of these things emerge and sort of recalibrate in your own mind. And it's an amazing thing to do. It's basically, the whole film is a trip through the major arcana, isn't it? And so when you sleep on it, when you watch it just before you go to sleep, that helps to generate your own quest through the major arcana. It's a really great film for that.
Oh, totally. It's up there in my top 10. It's it's a unique film. It's actually it's one of those films you can't really place exactly where it is, and loathe it or love it, it makes it will be with you. It will be with you, won't it? It's not. It's uncompromising.
About the sort of composition, the kind of, I don't know, the incredible composition and the colours. They just sear into your consciousness, don't they? It's like everything is like a painting. It's so beautiful.
So one thing I've always wanted to talk to you about, because I've heard you in another interview talk about how you don't like this idea of technology being used for dreams or to induce dreams. I think maybe it was actually in a conversation, but you said you weren't keen on the idea of like dream machines and.
I don't know. I do think that virtual reality could potentially be really good for dreams insofar as, there is evidence to suggest that gamers, especially those using VR, have more lucid dreams. And I think it's part of it is about how you interact with that technology. So the way we're interacting now with like flat screens, I think that's really detrimental to encouraging that kind of dream perception, because the dream way of looking at the world is through a three-dimensional space. You're kind of constantly moving forward. So that's much more sympathetic to the way that you see the world in VR. And I remember doing VR for the first time, and I had a lucid dream that night. And I know that the lucid dream was inspired by this VR experience where I was like under the ocean looking at all these jellyfish passing by and stuff. So I think virtual reality is potentially a really useful dream entrainment tool. I think that the kind of technology we're using now with scrolling is really bad, because scrolling is the antithesis of the way that you look into dream space. And because people are spending so much time scrolling, they're entraining their eyes to look at the world in this sort of scrolling, rapid up and down way. And I was looking into this and thinking, looking at stuff rapidly and moving your eyes up and down quickly is eye movement associated with trauma. And if you do EMDR therapy, you have to kind of make sweeping left to right eye movements slowly. And this is much more about sort of scanning a depth of field and much more like the dreaming experience. And so I think just the way that we interact with scrolling and social media is this accidental, weird trauma that we're developing anxiety as a result of, over time, just constantly practicing this kind of trauma-informed, panicky eye movement that's totally unnatural. So I think that anything that encourages us to explore a depth of field visually, just in a really sort of practical sense, because it's about the way that you're spending most of your time looking at the world. And if you are mostly looking at a screen, you're looking at it in a really unnatural, shallow, flat surface type of way. It's not at all like the way you would experience dreaming. So, a digital detox is always one of the best things to get back into dreaming, I think.
One of the technologies I've become really interested in, which is very much dream related, is have you heard of Robert Monroe before? The gateway experience. What are your thoughts? Hemisync, yeah, but more so the gateway experience, which was it's their initial program that they released. What are your thoughts on that style of dream? Because that's kind of dream tech.
Yeah, the binaural beats type of stuff.
Yeah.
I haven't used that very much. I'm like really sensitive to sound during sleep. Like I don't like it. I like to have silence, and so I've never been very excited to use any of these hemisync things. I might use it in meditation, but I haven't used it for sleeping. I find sound really distracting when I'm sleeping, although I'm really interested in how you can change dreams by providing a kind of soundscape. Like I think Luke Jerram, there's a few musicians that have done these experiments where they've toured galleries around the world. And I think Luke Jerram's one was called The Dream Director, where he had people sleeping in pods overnight and then was playing soundscapes that had various kind of field recordings of different sorts of locations. And the idea is that when people slept in there, they'd be taken to these like different locations in their dreams. But I'm also interested in how we might use olfaction, like the sense of smell, to influence dream content as well. Because dreams are so related to memory and emotion, I'm doing some experiments to see if when people are sleeping, certain smells are introduced to the environment, that they will then dream of the memory that they associate with this particular smell. So, for example, if you smell the perfume of a loved one, that person would then appear in your dream. I think it seems promising that this would be effective.
Yeah, it's I completely lost my train of thought there. Oh yeah. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think I'm the opposite. I can't sleep unless I have some sort of white noise or noise. It's really I have quite intense dreams, but they tend to be like I have to have a fan on. So it's just something that kind of, I think it's because I have ADHD, so it kind of like does something to my brain that lets it sleep, sort of thing, a lot deeper. But one thing is with dreams, how do you feel about dreams? I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but dreams kind of coming true. I mean, Mark has a story.
I'm sort of obliged. It's a weird thing. It's very important. It's a life-changing experience for me, this dream, and I don't find it easy to talk about it, which is interesting, but because it's so important. So I had a dream. You know, part of the kind of spiritual tradition or magical tradition I follow is you need to keep a dream diary. So at some point I was doing that. I had incredible dreams. I got to the point where I was, every morning I was recording dreams, because if you get into a habit, your mind remembers it better.
Yeah, it's incredible what happens when you start.
That's a very sort of common thing. So I had this dream, which was a vivid dream, but it wasn't particularly anything other than that. And where I was living, I was standing at a very specific place in the town I lived in, and it was just to go into the details. It was inside a shopping centre. On the right hand side was a stairwell and lifts, and there was a big window which looked out to the Salvation Army building, I believe. And then there was a big window at the front which looked out to bus stop, because that's where I was sort of going to. And in my dream, I suddenly had this very intense sense of being watched. Another weird thing about it, the shopping centre in my dream was completely empty, which I've never experienced it like that. And so that was a bit of the uncanny thing about it, but there's a lot more to come. Anyways, I had this very intense sense of being watched. Then at the same time, because I was familiar with it, in the Key of Solomon, the King, Mather's edition, there's the fourth pentacle of Venus flashed up. It flashed up in front of me in brilliant emerald green colours. The power, the virtue of the magical influence of it is supposed to be to bring a person to you in an instant. Then I turned around, and there was somebody I knew who was very significant to me, and who I thought I wouldn't see ever again. And they were standing, sort of coming towards me. On the right-hand side and on the left-hand side, there were two people I'd never seen before in my life. The one on the right-hand side was quite short and had a round face, short, dark, curly hair, and sort of very prominent eyebrows, and a leather jacket which was open with a kind of checkered top. And the other one was much taller and thinner. And the bloke I knew, the person in the middle, he was just wearing his normal things, and he's quite a tall chap, anyways. And then then they sort of come towards me. Right at the end of the dream, I sort of fly up into the air like Peter Pan. Anyways, it was just a dream, very simple. I've gone into detail there because it's important. And then exactly 11 days later, I happened to be in that area. I completely forgot the dream because I've had all these other dreams. It was just a dream. It was, and then suddenly I felt somebody watching me intensely. I turn around and I'm standing in exactly the same place. I'm turned around. There's the stairwell. There's the place where the bus is coming and so on. And there they were. So, and there was this person with the two people I've never seen before in my life. Well, I had in a dream, and there they were in real life. And what I didn't have an impression of that the fourth pentacle of the Key of Solomon. So that wasn't there. And actually, I didn't fly up in the air afterwards. So, but that dream, that moment, is always going to be with me. I mean, I took the bus ride home, which I've done hundreds of times, and I can still remember it. I can still remember the bus stopping at the traffic lights, which I've done thousands of times, with this sense of awe. Because I can't dismiss the dream. I have no conventional explanation for it, and at the same time, I can't. More conscience. I can't make sense of it. And also I find it very irritating because I don't believe you can see into the future. Because because in some ways that means it's already happened, and so it was like very annoying as well. But also I had this sense of awe. Holy dread, which we don't have. I mean, that sounds like a negative thing, but it's not. We don't have the language. We've lost that. And of course, as soon as I got home, I flew upstairs, got my diary out, and read my account, and my account was exact in every detail. So I've got that. So people have said to me, "Oh, it's just a coincidence." Well, if it's a coincidence, it's a coincidence that breaks all the rules of coincidence. And if it was the other way around, if I had that experience of standing there and being felt watched and blah blah, and they came over, and then I dreamt about it, nobody would be saying, "Oh, there's no connection. There's a coincidence." But causality has been turned on its head, and and that dream changed my life. Because I was shown that the unconscious, it's not just in your head. There's an objective reality, and there's information I did not have access to before. I had no, there's two people who I didn't even know exist, and then it's confirmed that they're in relative, even down to the point that one's on the right, one's on the left. How can that work? How can 10 days later, if we're walking around, is it all then set out? So I mean, there's theories about you have Nietzsche's idea of the eternal return. And funny enough, he had a dream. He had a dream when he was very young of his brother dying, and the next day his brother actually died. And so I think that led into his theories later in life. But even then, I don't know. I can't account for it. But it showed me the universe is a far more. It's not even stranger than we imagine. It's stranger than we can imagine. And the unconscious mind is the routine, and in the sort of in my own magical tradition, that's what you're making. All that visualization and stuff, and keeping the dream diary. That's all about making friends with the unconscious mind. It becomes.
I think the dream realm to me is a realm in which you can practice magic powerfully, because you are. When you're lucid in particular, you recognize that your thoughts and feelings manifest material content in that dream realm immediately. And I think the same is true of ordinary waking reality, only the processes are much more subtle and slight, and they take a much longer time to manifest. But I do think dreams are the perfect space to practice magical thinking and manifestation. I mean,
I went through, I did a quite intense sort of series of workings with the assumption of God forms. There's a bit where it's like you sort of meditate basically and visualize the form of the God over you. And I was working with the God Thoth, and at night, because it was over an extended period, as I was drifting into sleep, I could feel my face turning. I'm not claiming, by the way, I was physically turning into a bird, but I could feel my face becoming the beak of Thoth as I was. I'm not making any conscious choice about it. It had been imprinted so much into my unconscious mind. As I drifted in, I was becoming this thing.
I think this power we have is hugely underestimated, and it's not quite imagination, but it is imaginal somehow. It's like a power that, from imagination comes real things. So the more powerful your imagination, the more power you have to create real things, I think. So, I find kids inspirational because kids are able to live in their imaginal realms and kind of hold the two things simultaneously. So live in reality and yet have these vivid experiences of playing and exploring an imaginal realm. I think we need to introduce a bit more of that, perhaps through magical practice for adult life, because otherwise life's pretty boring. If people are just kind of really all they care about is that job and buying stuff, what's the point? I think that the imagination and imaginal experiences and these altered states are there for a reason. They're there to make us feel sort of less alone in the universe and more part of the continuum.
I totally. I mean, I think we lost that contact with what you will, or there's the other side of the veil, and we have to make a kind of have a meaningful relationship with it. I think lots of forms of mental illness and so on come from that lack, that alienation. It's a two-edged sword though, because it can go the other way. I mean,
absolutely. I'm always very careful in workshops because I'm very well aware of that. And, I've got friends that have got mental health issues, and I've seen what they go through and psychosis and all these kinds of things. So I think it is something that you've got to be mindful of. But then that's why it's useful to have these healthy frameworks whereby these experiences can be kind of held and recognized as being imaginal without being written off.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I work in the mental health profession, and it's incredibly important to me, and it's an enormous privilege, the work I do, and the experiences that people share with me, and you learn so much all the time, But I'm aware that for vulnerable people or certain people with certain conditions, that you can trigger their psychosis and they'll be swept away by it. So it is a very much a two-edged sword. But it's interesting. I mean, the whole world of mental health, of professional mental health, has gone from being a very biomedical view. There's a place for that, but also but it's far more holistic. It's about what you do in the world, making meaningful relationships, socializing. Often it's very simple, everyday things that top up our well-being. But for some people where mental health is a bigger part of their life, it can get in the way. It gets in the way of their lives.
Well, there's so many extra stressing factors these days, and I think stress plays a massive part in that. And where people don't feel like they're part of a community or they don't feel safe, then those kind of some of these forms can be used as a form of escapism, and then you can end up with psychotic delusions and all sorts of things happening. I think feeling safe, feeling secure, and feeling part of a community and looked out for and cared for is massively important.
Yeah, totally.
So, obviously, you have your book out now, and people can buy this, and it's been out for a while now, isn't it? I think like a few months.
Yeah.
But what else do you plan on doing? I mean, I know you in the past you ran the Explorers Club. I don't know. Are you still running the Explorers Club, or?
I haven't done any Explorers Clubs in person for a while. I did do an Explorers Egyptology night quite recently. But at the moment, I'm working mostly on putting together this symposium in Athens at the end of October. So that's really exciting. And then I've got 2 retreats at the sanctuary of Asclepius at Epidavros as well. So we're staying in a villa on the edge of the actual sanctuary and visiting the sanctuary and going on some little trips around there as well. There's this amazing sunken city. The ancient city of Epidavros is just on the coastline there, and you can just swim over it. It's literally just swimmable from the shore. I'm a bit of a pathetic swimmer because I nearly drowned in Brighton once. And so I don't like swimming out of my depth very much. But you can just swim off the shore and be over. It's only like about 1.5 meters under the surface of the water. It's amazing. I love Greece. My dream now would be to study Cycladic frying pans and live on a Greek island. I'd love that.
Okay, so when you're not dreaming about frying pans, where can people find you online?
So my website's themysteries.org, and actually I've just updated it, so I've got pretty much everything up on there now, I think. And then I'm actually in London next Thursday for a book event at Watkins. I think that starts at 5:30 till 6:30. So and then I've got some online talks scheduled as well. I'm doing one about dream goddesses, so goddesses that are associated with dreaming rituals and death and regeneration.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for coming back on the show, and I really appreciate you giving us some more of your time.
And is there a book? Is there a book in the pipeline? A new book? Because I got a strong impression.
Not yet. I mean,
I'm pushing it.
Talking about the stresses of ordinary life. I live in Hastings, and Hastings has gone through this ridiculous period of gentrification. So my rent has like tripled since I've moved here. So, what I need is some sort of regular gig whereby rent and the ordinary sort of demands of life are met, and then I might write a book.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when I was reading the book, I got strong sense there was a lot more to be said, and I mean that as a massive compliment, total compliment, So that meat on the bone, there's more there, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I was saying to you earlier, I've learned a lot more since I wrote it as well. So it would be pretty good, I think, to write another book.
Okay, we're back. That was fun. Sarah Janes is always an interesting person. Whenever I encounter her online, she has some interesting takes on things, and she's clearly very well researched on the topic of dreams, especially sort of esoteric dream topics and dream therapy and dream rituals. So yeah, I definitely recommend picking up her book. There's some interesting stuff in there. Like we didn't mention it in the interview, but she has kind of guided meditations, and you go onto the website. There's a website link in the book, and you go there, and she reads these kind of quite powerful guided meditations. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, go check it out. I don't know the link. It's a custom one for the book, so you have to get the book. So we're back next week. We might start releasing double episodes, so we might be doubling up for a while because I've overbooked the show. But we've been away for a while, so we've got some catching up to do. We'll be back next week. I think the idea is to release on Fridays now, Friday mornings, Friday afternoon. If you're in America, it'll be like probably Thursday night still. But yeah, that's the plan. And then if I do 2 episodes in a week, I'll probably release one on Tuesday and one on Friday. I think that's the plan moving forward. We're also looking into doing some Patreon style content where you give us some money and we start to record custom shows for that. Sort of Patreon exclusives, like early access to shows. And we're also working on another massive project, but I'm not ready to reveal that yet. That's going to involve you guys to an extent, and it's quite ambitious, but we are ready to do that. And that's all I can say. Anyway, I hope you've managed to sit through me droning on. I will see you guys next week. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter @SittingNow, Instagram @SittingNow, Facebook @SittingNow, and of course YouTube @SittingNow. We'll be back soon. Looking forward to it, and see you next time.